No one at Blackmore House slept anymore. The silence inside the great stone mansion felt heavier than the winter clouds hanging over the hills of New York State. It pressed into every hallway, every room, every breath. It was the silence left behind when a mother died and a child decided, quietly and without drama, that living no longer made sense. Lady Georgiana Harrow had not eaten in 3 weeks. She sat each morning in the deep window seat of her bedroom, small hands folded in her lap, staring out at the rain as if counting the drops gave them meaning. Her body had grown thin, her face pale and sharp, her once bright blue eyes dull and distant. Trays of food came and went. Warm porridge with honey, soft bread with butter, apples sliced just the way her mother used to prepare them. Nothing was touched. It was not stubbornness. It was not defiance. It was emptiness. Georgiana no longer remembered why people ate. Food had no taste. Swallowing felt pointless. Her stomach felt closed, like a door that refused to open again. 3 weeks earlier, her mother had been alive. Her mother had smelled of rose water and lavender, had hummed while sewing by the fire, had laughed when eggs burned on Sunday mornings. Her mother had kissed Georgiana's hair before bed and promised to wake her in the morning. 5 days later, her mother was placed in the family chapel beneath cold earth. Georgiana had watched it happen. She had held her mother's hand while it went still. She had whispered goodbye into a silence that never answered. Now people said things like, "She is at peace," and "She is in heaven." Georgiana did not understand how peace could exist in the cold. Behind her, another tray sat untouched. A young maid lingered by the door, hands twisting nervously in her apron. "Please, my lady," she whispered, "just one bite." Georgiana turned her face to the wall. The maid left in tears. Outside the room, Thomas Harrow, Duke of Blackmore, stood with his hand raised, unable to knock. He was 41, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair already touched with gray. Once, his eyes had been warm. Now they looked carved from stone. He had buried his wife 3 weeks ago. Now he was watching his daughter fade. He could not bring himself to enter the room. Every time he saw Georgiana, he felt accused. Not by words, but by her silence, by her hollow eyes, by the question she never asked, "Why did you let Mama die?" He turned away and walked down the long corridor, his footsteps echoing through a house that no longer felt like a home. In his study, the doctor waited. "You must be honest with me," the Duke said, gripping the edge of his desk. The physician hesitated only a moment. "Your Grace, the child is wasting away. Her body is weak, her pulse unsteady. If she does not begin to take nourishment soon, she will not survive." "There must be medicine," Thomas said. "Something you can do." The doctor shook his head. "This is not an illness of the body, it is grief. The child has lost the will to live." The word struck harder than any blow. After the doctor left, Thomas sat alone, staring at the portrait above the fireplace. His wife looked down at him, smiling, alive forever in paint. She had been his opposite. Where he was reserved, she had been warm. Where he was rigid, she had been full of laughter. They had married out of duty. They had fallen in love by accident. "She will have enough love for 10 children, Catherine had once said, holding their newborn daughter. "Promise me you will protect her heart." He had promised. Now he was breaking it. That evening, the housekeeper came to him with quiet urgency. "Your Grace," she said, "another governess has resigned. She says she cannot bear to watch the child die." Another failure, another door closing. The Duke sat in the dark long after she left, finally admitting what he had been avoiding. He did not know how to help his daughter. That night, he wrote letters to every placement agency he could find. He asked for someone patient, someone gentle, someone who understood loss. One reply arrived before dawn. It was brief, no grand credentials, no polished language. Only this: "I lost my mother when I was 7. For a long time, I forgot how to live. I do not promise miracles. I promise I will not abandon your child. Signed, Eleanor Westbrook. The Duke sent for her at once. 2 days later, a modest carriage arrived at Blackmore House. A young woman stepped down onto the gravel drive, holding a worn carpet bag. She was 24, plainly dressed, her auburn hair pinned back simply. Her eyes were calm, but there was something deep and knowing in them. She looked at the house and understood immediately. This was a place full of grief. Inside, she met the Duke. "My daughter has not eaten in 14 days, he told her. She barely speaks. She stares at nothing. Eleanor listened. She did not interrupt. Then she asked a question no one else had dared. "What did your wife smell like?" The Duke froze. "Rosewater," he said slowly. "And lavender." "What did she and the child do together?" "They read. They embroidered. They walked in the garden." "Was the child present when your wife died?" "Yes." Eleanor nodded. "Then the child is not starving herself. She is holding on to her mother the only way she knows how." The Duke looked at her, something breaking in his expression. "You may do whatever you think best," he said, "whatever it takes." That afternoon, Eleanor was shown to Georgiana's room. The child sat in the window seat, thin as a shadow, her hair dull and tangled, her nightgown hanging loose on her small frame. Eleanor did not rush forward. She did not speak loudly. She pulled a chair near the window and sat down quietly. "Good afternoon, Lady Georgiana," she said softly. "My name is Eleanor. I have come to sit with you. You do not need to speak. You do not need to eat. I will simply stay." Georgiana did not look at her. Eleanor stayed anyway. Rain tapped gently against the glass. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The child did not move. Eleanor did not leave. Outside the room, the Duke watched through a crack in the door, his heart tight with fear and hope. For the first time in 3 weeks, someone had not tried to force his daughter back to life. Someone had chosen to sit with her in the dark. And somewhere deep inside Lady Georgiana Harrow, something shifted. Eleanor returned the next morning at the same hour. She did not carry a tray. She did not bring medicine or advice. She brought only herself and a small book bound in faded blue cloth. She placed the chair in the same spot near the window and sat down as if nothing in the world required urgency. Georgiana noticed. She did not turn her head, but she noticed. Eleanor opened the book and began to read aloud. Not a cheerful story, not a lesson. It was a poem about loss, about a woman who disappeared from the world and left silence behind. Eleanor read slowly, her voice steady, never dramatic. She did not look at the child while she read. When she finished, she closed the book and sat quietly again. "I will come back tomorrow," she said gently, and left. That night, Georgiana dreamed of her mother for the first time since the funeral. Not of death, but of hands, sewing by the fire and a soft humming voice. On the third day, Eleanor brought her embroidery. She worked silently, the needle moving in calm rhythm. After a long while she spoke, not to Georgiana, but to the room itself. "My mother died when I was 7, she said. "I remember her hands most. She had a scar on her thumb. I used to trace it when I was frightened." Georgiana's fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the window seat. Eleanor did not press. She kept sewing. On the 4th day, Eleanor opened the window despite the cold. Winter air rushed in sharp and clean. A maid protested in the hallway, but Eleanor stopped her. "Her mother liked fresh air," Eleanor said simply. The cold smelled like the garden. Like mornings when Mama used to say, "Stuffy air makes sad thoughts." Georgiana's eyes burned. She did not cry. Not yet. On the 5th day, Eleanor placed small lavender sachets around the room. The scent filled the air. "It does not smell like her," Georgiana whispered suddenly, her voice thin and unused. Eleanor nodded. "No, nothing ever will." That is, one of the cruel parts of loss. Everyone else had told her different lies, that her mother was near, that everything would feel the same again. This woman did not lie. On the 6th day, Eleanor spoke the words no one else dared. "She is gone," Eleanor said quietly. And that hurts in a way nothing else ever will. People say she is at peace because they do not know what else to say. Georgiana turned then, really turned, her eyes wide. "My mother is not at peace," Eleanor continued. "If she can see you, she is worried. She would be frightened that you are fading." That night, Georgiana cried for the first time. On the 7th day, Eleanor asked, "May I brush your hair?" Georgiana hesitated, then nodded once. As Eleanor brushed gently, she began to hum without realizing it. Georgiana gasped. "That song," she whispered. "My mother sang that." Eleanor froze. "It is a song from my mother's childhood." They shared a silence that felt like a bridge between two losses. That evening, the Duke stood outside the door and listened. He heard something he had not heard in weeks. His daughter's voice. Soft, fragile, alive. Over the next days, Georgiana began to speak more. Single words at first, then short sentences. She still refused food, but something inside her was loosening. Then the storm came. One morning, Eleanor brought breakfast. Eggs, toast, warm milk. Georgiana looked at it and screamed. She swept the tray onto the floor. Dishes shattered. Food spilled everywhere. Her small body shook with rage. "I hate eating," she cried. "I hate waking up. I hate that she left me. Why did she leave me?" Servants rushed to the door. The Duke appeared, terrified. Eleanor raised her hand. "Let her," she said. Georgiana screamed until her voice broke. She beat her fists against the floor, sobbing words that had been locked inside her chest for weeks. Eleanor did not stop her. She stayed. She listened. When Georgiana collapsed from exhaustion, Eleanor gathered her into her arms and rocked her gently, humming the old song. The child slept in her lap. The Duke wept in the doorway. The next morning, Eleanor brought porridge with honey. Georgiana whispered, "I am hungry." She ate slowly. Tears ran down her face as she swallowed, but she ate. That was the first meal. From that day on, food returned little by little. So did color, so did laughter. The Duke began visiting daily. He told stories about Georgiana's mother. He cried openly. Georgiana cried with him. The house began to breathe again, but something else was growing quietly, in the way the Duke watched Eleanor, in the way Eleanor steadied him without touching, in the way they both loved the same child. Love was blooming in the ruins of grief. Neither of them dared to name it yet. Winter loosened its grip slowly, as if afraid to let go. Snow melted along the paths of Blackmore House, revealing dark earth beneath, and Georgiana grew stronger with each passing week. She ate now without fear. Not large meals, not yet, but enough. Her cheeks filled out. Her eyes regained their light. Laughter returned in small, careful pieces, like glass being put back together. Each morning she ate breakfast with her father. Each afternoon, Eleanor read to her by the fire. Each evening, the Duke came to sit beside his daughter and speak of her mother without flinching. He said her name now. Catherine. He said it aloud and let the ache come. Georgiana watched him closely. Seeing her father cry did not frighten her anymore. It steadied her. It told her that grief was not something to hide. It was something to carry together. One evening, as Eleanor brushed Georgiana's hair before bed, the child spoke quietly. "Will you leave me one day?" Eleanor's hands paused. "Why would you think that?" "Everyone leaves." Georgiana said simply, "Mama left. The governesses left. Papa left for a while, even though he stayed in the house." Eleanor knelt in front of her. "I will not leave you," she said. "Not unless you no longer need me." Georgiana studied her face, searching for truth. Then she leaned forward and wrapped her arms around Eleanor's neck. That night, Eleanor cried alone in her small room, overwhelmed by the weight of being needed so deeply. The Duke noticed everything. He noticed the way his daughter's laughter returned when Eleanor entered her room. He noticed how Eleanor never took credit, never asked for praise. He noticed how the house felt warm again, alive again. He also noticed the way his heart shifted when she smiled. It frightened him. Catherine had been dead only months. Loving again felt like betrayal. Wanting again felt wrong. So, he kept his distance. Until the night he broke. It happened on a cold evening near Christmas. Georgiana was asleep. The house was quiet. The Duke sat alone in his study, staring at the fire, surrounded by memories he could no longer avoid. Eleanor came to deliver her evening report. "She ate well today," Eleanor said softly. She laughed. "She asked about the garden in spring?" The Duke nodded, his hands clenched. Then, suddenly, he spoke. "I am angry," he said. Eleanor stilled. "I am angry at my wife for dying," he continued, his voice rough. "And I hate myself for it." Eleanor crossed the room and sat opposite him. "That anger does not mean you loved her less," she said. "It means you loved her deeply." His composure shattered. He buried his face in his hands and wept, openly and without restraint, for the first time since Catherine's death. Eleanor stayed with him, steady and quiet, letting the grief move through him the way it had moved through his daughter. When it passed, something changed. The Duke looked at Eleanor, really looked at her, and understood the truth he had been denying. "I love you," he said quietly. The words hung between them. Eleanor closed her eyes. "I love you too," she admitted, "but we cannot act on it." "For Georgiana," he said. "Yes." They stood in silence, hearts full and restrained by duty. Days passed. Christmas came. It was quiet, modest, but warm. Georgiana laughed more than she had in months. She ate until she was full. She gave Eleanor a small pressed flower as a gift and told her she was brave. Afterward, as winter deepened again, Eleanor made her decision. She could not stay forever pretending she felt nothing. Loving from a distance was slowly breaking her. One evening, she packed her carpet bag. Before dawn, she went to the Duke's study. "I must leave," she said. His face drained of color. "Why?" "Because I love you," she said honestly, "and because I love your daughter. If I stay while denying that truth, I will fail her eventually." Silence filled the room. Then Georgiana appeared in the doorway, barefoot, clutching her blanket. "You are leaving," she said. Eleanor knelt. "Yes." Georgiana walked forward and placed her small hand in Eleanor's. "If you leave, I will stop eating again," she said calmly. The Duke inhaled sharply. Eleanor looked at the child, then at the man she loved. Georgiana lifted her chin. "Mama would want us to be a family," she said. "She told me that love matters more than rules." The Duke knelt beside his daughter. "Would you accept Eleanor as part of our family?" he asked. Georgiana nodded without hesitation. "Forever." The Duke turned to Eleanor. "I will wait," he said. "I will honor mourning. I will do this properly. But I will not lose you." Eleanor's resolve cracked. She stayed. Spring came. Roses bloomed again in the garden Catherine had loved. Georgiana ran among them, strong and laughing. The Duke smiled more easily. Eleanor found herself belonging in ways she never had before. A year passed. When the mourning period ended, the Duke asked Eleanor to marry him. She said yes. The wedding was small, no spectacle. Only those who mattered. Georgiana scattered rose petals with joy. At Catherine's grave, Eleanor placed her bouquet gently on the stone. "Thank you," she whispered, "for trusting me with them." Lady Georgiana Harrow had once stopped eating because grief felt heavier than hunger. But love returned her to life. And Eleanor Westbrook did the impossible. She stayed.